Alright, so I think maybe the first time I did this, I might have done it wrong. It's hard to tell what's right and wrong sometimes when you don't know things like perfectly rationally. But the first you can see in my other video, or in the rest of this video, with my quote-unquote proofs or calculations, but that got me to thinking, essentially about, like, if I afterwards I'd watched a video where if you have a circle divided in three, and you have another circle performing epicycles with a radius of a third, thus with a circumference of a third, you'll get this configuration where it goes around once, twice, 3 times. But if you're considering the radius of the smaller circle as it relates to the radius of the larger circle, but if you're concerned with the radius as it points down towards some presumed horizon below or wherever, then in respect to itself, it's going to rotate or revolve 4 times, because this will be pointing down this particular radius 4 times, but it will be pointing toward the center 3 times. This, to me, is completely infuriating. I can't make rational sense of it yet, but I want to. And so that would tell me that when I'm trying, for instance, this is all really concerned with I. And the whole idea of if this is 0 or 1, I, -1, -I, then this is I to the 0, I to the 1, I to the 2, I to the 3, I to the 4. So if you have a circumference, which is the unit circle, and then you revolve an epicycle around that, which is 1/4 of the radius. This is 1/4 of the radius because it is, or rather it's, well, this right here is 1/4 of this radius. This circle fits into this diameter 4 times. Because this radius is a quarter of this radius, this circumference is a quarter of this circumference, thus it goes around 4 times. This point revolves around to here, to here, to here, to here. And that's why when originally I'd done this in 12, and this is 1/4, this represents 1 revolution of this smaller circle around 1/4 of the unit circle, which, later I created the whole circle of, which you can see in my animation. But then my concern was that, just as with the unit circle divided in thirds gives you 4, the unit circle divided in 4 will give you, this is a horrible drawing, but will give you 5. So my concern is that I want to come to a point where, say, this is our 0 or 1, this is I, this is -1, this is -I. Then, if we have our epicycle circles, or this is my initial epicycle circle, rotates around so that it's oriented again toward the center, rotates around so it's oriented toward the center, rotates around so it's oriented to the center, rotates around so it's oriented to the center. I to the 0, I to the 1, I to the 2, I to the 3, I to the 4. But then I became concerned again about this, I guess, perpendicularities to a supposed horizon issue. So it revolves, rotates 4 times in respect to the larger circle center, but in respect to the horizon 5 times. Once again, completely infuriating. Oops, I have these on the wrong side. But I found in doing this, I couldn't come to fifths because I had 48. I had 48 petitions because it was 12 petitions by 4 quadrants, obviously not divisible by 5. So I had to create something that was divisible by 5. And the only way to do that was to create an epicycle who had 20 petitions and a unit circle who had 80 petitions, arc lengths, arc segment petitions. So I guess the argument for that is that then this circle will still perform as the other circle in respect on starting to prove that the Richmond construction actually does separate the unit circle into 5, and I guess I'll have to create an appendix for that, but I did, I guess, prove it to myself with much difficulty, because mostly I make mistakes, and I'm not like a number cruncher or someone who really knows this stuff. I have to work really hard at it, and mostly I make mistakes and have to go back over them, but I guess I'll run through it real quick as far as how this segment right here is equal to this segment right here. This goes around 4 times. Once here, once here, once here, once here. This has 20 partitions of this, which is equal to this, but there are 80 partitions. 80 divided by 20 is 4. So it goes around 20, 20, 20, 20. And of course, there's also the same size circle on the inside, which I'll get to, which does the same thing in a little bit different of a way, but essentially, as far as the arc length is concerned, provided, which would be a way more complex issue, provided lines don't have, provided lines are truly dimensionless, and provided that we can do that. And given some of the, I guess what I consider, well, they call it Babylonian, but I've heard that there is no Babylonian, but it's really Mesopotamian, but they call it Babylonian numbers. I mean, there's just way more involved, you know, but so far as anything is provable in the way that I've learned things provable, which is there's just reason to doubt much of the proofs that we've been taught. a lot of reason to doubt, you know, because people talk about reason and reasonable and ration, and, you know, especially they use it with science and so on. People talk about it with science and so on, but in a world where there's no unified theory, in a world where there are so many mysterious things, like someone as irrational, as unreasonable as me, if I were faced with pure reason, you know, when people talk about like mystical thinking and magic and woo-wooism, you know, physics woo-woo and all this other kind of stuff, like, if you're like me, just regular guy, regular Joe, regular whoever, like, could I imagine, like, how miraculous pure reason would seem? All possibilities, not only all possibilities, all actualities as they connect together in perfection, viewed from my little, you know, toadstool. Anyway, guess that's getting off the point, but I guess I'll, you know, and this isn't my construction, but I've sufficiently proved to myself that this divides the unit circle in 5 equally, and that this divides the unit circle in 4 equally. So at this point we have 3 ta, ta being 2 pi, ta being 1 turn of the circle, 3/4 ta, 1/4 ta, 2/4 ta, 3/4 ta. This being 4/5 ta, 1/5 ta, 2/5 ta, 3/5 ta, 4/5 ta. So we have the radius equals 1 because this is the unit circle. Our circumference, and this is my little symbol for circumference, a dotted circle with a C inside of it. I guess I'll get to later why I'm trying to use my own symbols. A lot of it has to do with repetitions and using different things. It becomes confusing. We use C for this, we use C for that, we use C for this, we use C for that, and it becomes very confusing. And at the end of the day, it is more than a belief of mine, but a conviction that all symbols really do mean something exact, and I don't have enough symbols, so I don't think that this is a precise or an exact symbol. But I think if there's ever to be a unified theory, never mind of physics or whatever, but a unified theory of symbolism, a unified theory of physics, that's the whole thing too, between like relativity, quantum physics, whatever, and I can't remember which relativity it is. I'm really struggling trying to understand all this stuff, but if you were only to come with a unified theory, if you were only to come together with a unified theory with what exists now as far as like math and physics, like you'd still fall very short because there has to be a unified theory truly of everything. And part of that everything, not all of that everything, all of human knowledge, all text, all alphabets, all language, all sounds, all spectral phenomena, everything has to be united. And if it's not unified. Because there's a reason, there is a reason for everything. And I struggle to convince myself of this. Actually, I don't struggle to convince myself that this is true, because this is a conviction. It lies somewhere for me between belief and knowledge. I know very little, and my beliefs are pretty haphazard, and I don't trust my beliefs, but I've seen enough to know, and I'll get to more of it later, but I have a conviction that specific symbols go with specific spectral phenomena, go with specific sounds, with specific times, with specific spaces. And until we all figure it out, this is why this is so important. The whole idea of like relativism and perception is reality and so on, like perception is not reality. Perception is perceived as reality. Perception is reacted upon as reality. As in with, behavioralism and so on, Pavlov's dog. I am very behavioralized. I am very manipulable. Click your pen and my physiology will drastically change. Raise your voice, do whatever. Ring your bell. And my jowls will twitch. My salivary glands